In the depths of the universe lies a profound truth, one that has echoed throughout the ages and across all spiritual traditions. Everything has its opposite, and these opposites are two extremes of the same essence. This is the essence of the Hermetic Principle of Polarity, one of the most powerful and transformative teachings of the ancient Hermetic tradition. It reveals that everything in existence is dual, and that every aspect of life, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, operates through polarities: light and dark, love and hate, hot and cold, success and failure, joy and sorrow. Yet these opposites are not separate. They are merely different degrees of the same thing. In a world filled with constant challenges, desires, and personal growth, the principle of polarity offers deep insight into how we can transcend the apparent contradictions of life and harness the power of opposites to our advantage. It teaches us that by understanding and mastering polarity, we can shift our perspective, balance our emotions, and transform our experiences. Life is not a random series of opposites fighting for dominance, but rather a harmonious dance of dualities that offers endless opportunities for personal mastery and spiritual evolution. Understanding the principle of polarity, duality in all things. At its core, the principle of polarity reveals that everything is dual. Everything has its poles, and everything has its pair of opposites. Hot and cold, for example, are not two separate things, but varying degrees of the same phenomenon: temperature. Love and hate are not two distinct emotions, but rather extremes of the same energy. The same applies to light and dark, life and death, or success and failure. These are not contradictions, but points on a continuum, with infinite possibilities between the two extremes. The concept of polarity is not just theoretical. It is a fundamental aspect of the physical world, our emotional experiences, and the spiritual realms. It explains why we often experience cycles in life, swinging between happiness and sadness, hope and despair, confidence and doubt. The principle of polarity teaches that these opposites are necessary for balance, and understanding this truth allows us to stop resisting the natural flow of life and instead work with it. In modern life, where many of us are conditioned to see things in terms of black and white, good or bad, success or failure, the principle of polarity offers a way to shift our thinking. It teaches us that there is always a middle ground, and that by recognizing the fluidity between opposites, we can begin to see the hidden potential in every situation. Instead of being stuck in a dualistic mindset, we learn to embrace the full spectrum of experience and harness the power of polarity to create positive change. Shifting your perspective, moving between the poles. One of the most empowering aspects of the principle of polarity is the realization that you can shift between the poles. Just because you are experiencing a low point in one area of your life does not mean you are stuck there. In fact, this principle teaches that by shifting your perspective, you can move from one pole to the other. For example, if you are feeling overwhelmed by fear or doubt, you can consciously shift toward confidence and courage. If you are trapped in a cycle of negativity, you can move toward positivity and hope. This shift does not happen by magic. It requires awareness, intention, and practice. But the beauty of this principle is that it shows us that everything is fluid. Nothing is static. When you find yourself in a low vibrational state, whether emotionally or mentally, the opposite pole is always within reach. This principle encourages us to become masters of our own experience by learning to navigate between opposites. Take the example of failure and success. Many people see these as two separate, opposing forces. Failure is feared and success is glorified. But the principle of polarity teaches that failure and success are not opposites. They are two sides of the same coin. Every failure contains within it the seed of success, and every success is built upon the lessons learned from failure. When we embrace this truth, we no longer fear failure. Instead, we see it as part of the process of growth and achievement. In relationships too, the principle of polarity offers deep wisdom. Love and hate are often seen as opposites, but in reality, they are simply two extremes of the same energy. The intensity of emotion that fuels love can easily flip to hate if it is not balanced, and vice versa. Understanding this dynamic allows us to navigate the complexities of relationships with greater ease and awareness, recognizing that every emotion exists on a spectrum and that balance is key. Emotional mastery through polarity. One of the most practical applications of the principle of polarity is in the realm of emotional mastery. Our emotions are constantly in flux, swinging between different poles throughout the day. One moment, we may feel joyful and inspired, and the next, we may feel anxious or overwhelmed. The principle of polarity teaches us that these emotional swings are natural, but we have the power to influence where we are on the emotional spectrum. When we understand that emotions such as love and hate, joy and sorrow, or peace and anger are not separate entities, but points on a continuum, we can begin to master our emotional state by consciously moving toward the higher vibrational pole. For example, if you find yourself consumed by anger, the principle of polarity invites you to recognize that anger is not a fixed state. It is simply an emotion on one end of the spectrum. By shifting your focus, you can move toward peace or forgiveness, which are the opposite poles of anger. This process of emotional alchemy, transmuting lower vibrational emotions into higher vibrational ones, is one of the key teachings of the principle of polarity. It allows us to take control of our emotional state rather than being controlled by it. Instead of feeling trapped in negative emotions, we learn to see them as temporary states that can be transformed with conscious effort. For example, when experiencing sadness or grief, it's important to honor those emotions and allow them to be felt. However, the principle of polarity reminds us that joy and hope are always accessible, even in the darkest moments. By shifting your focus to what brings you joy, even in small ways, you can begin to move toward the opposite pole and lift yourself out of the emotional low. This principle doesn't mean ignoring or suppressing negative emotions. On the contrary, it invites us to fully experience all emotions, knowing that each has its place and purpose. But it also empowers us to recognize that we are not bound by these emotions. We have the power to choose where we want to be on the emotional spectrum. And through awareness and intention, we can shift our emotional state. Polarity in personal growth, transcending duality. The principle of polarity also has profound implications for personal growth and self-mastery. Growth and evolution are inherently polar processes, as we constantly move between opposites in the pursuit of balance and wholeness. This principle teaches us that every challenge, setback, or limitation we face contains within it the potential for growth, expansion, and success. By embracing polarity, we transcend the dualistic mindset that labels experiences as good or bad. and instead see everything as part of a greater whole. In personal development, the principle of polarity helps us understand that our perceived limitations are simply one pole of a larger potential. For example, if you struggle with self-doubt or insecurity, these feelings are not fixed aspects of your identity. They are simply points on a continuum that also includes confidence and self-assurance. By working to shift your perspective and align with the opposite pole, you can begin to move from insecurity to confidence. This process of personal transformation is a continuous dance between opposites. We are constantly moving between states of expansion and contraction, growth and reflection, action and rest. The principle of polarity reminds us that this movement is natural and necessary. There will be times when we feel on top of the world and times when we feel like we're falling apart. But instead of resisting these cycles, we can embrace them, knowing that every low contains the seed of its opposite high. This principle also helps us transcend the fear of failure, which is one of the most common obstacles to personal growth. Many people fear failure because they see it as the opposite of success, but the principle of polarity teaches that failure and success are not separate. They are intimately connected. Every failure contains within it the lessons and insights necessary for success. By embracing failure as part of the process, we free ourselves from the fear that holds us back and open ourselves to greater possibilities for growth and achievement. Polarity in relationships. Embracing opposites. Relationships are one of the most complex and rewarding aspects of life, and the principle of polarity offers deep insight into how we can navigate the challenges and dynamics of our connections with others. All relationships exist within the realm of polarity, whether it's the polarity between masculine and feminine energies, the dynamic between love and conflict, or the balance between independence and partnership. Understanding the principle of polarity in relationships allows us to see that opposites are not inherently in conflict. Rather, they are complementary forces that, when balanced, create harmony and growth. For example, the polarity between masculine and feminine energies, which exists in all of us, regardless of gender, is not about opposition, but about balance. The masculine energy represents action, logic, and strength, while the feminine energy represents intuition, emotion, and nurturing. Both are necessary for a healthy, balanced relationship. And when these polarities are in harmony, the relationship thrives. However, when these polarities become imbalanced, when one partner dominates with one energy, or when there is resistance to the other's polarity, conflict can arise. The principle of polarity teaches us to embrace the differences in ourselves and our partners, recognizing that opposites are necessary for balance, and that conflict is simply a reflection of an imbalance in these polarities. In romantic relationships, love and conflict are often seen as opposites, but the principle of polarity teaches that they are part of the same spectrum. Conflict can be a powerful catalyst for deeper love and connection, as it reveals areas of imbalance and offers opportunities for growth. By understanding that conflict is not the opposite of love, but part of the same continuum, we can approach relationship challenges with greater openness and a willingness to learn. This principle also teaches us that balance in relationships is not static. It is a dynamic, ever-changing process. Just as the universe is in constant motion, so too are the polarities within relationships. There will be times when one partner needs more space and times when the other needs more connection. There will be moments of intense passion and moments of quiet reflection. The key to a healthy relationship is not avoiding these polarities, but learning to navigate them with awareness and grace. Polarity in spiritual growth, the dance of duality and unity. On a spiritual level, the principle of polarity teaches us about the duality of existence and the ultimate unity that lies beyond it. All spiritual traditions acknowledge the existence of opposites, light and dark, good and evil, spirit and matter. But they also teach that these opposites are ultimately part of the same divine reality. The spiritual path is about moving beyond duality and recognizing the underlying unity of all things. The principle of polarity reveals that all opposites are simply different expressions of the same divine essence. Just as light and dark are both necessary for the existence of the universe, so too are joy and sorrow, life and death, expansion and contraction. By embracing both poles and seeing them as part of the greater whole, we can transcend the illusion of separation and experience the unity of all things. This understanding allows us to navigate the ups and downs of the spiritual journey with greater peace and acceptance. Spiritual growth is not about avoiding the lows and seeking only the highs. It is about recognizing that both are necessary for growth. The dark night of the soul, for example, is often seen as a period of intense spiritual struggle, but it is also a time of profound transformation and awakening. The principle of polarity teaches us to embrace these periods of spiritual darkness, knowing that they are part of the process of moving toward the light. Conclusion: embracing the power of polarity in life. The Hermetic Principle of Polarity offers us a profound and transformative way of understanding the world and our place within it. By recognizing that everything exists on a spectrum and that opposites are simply different degrees of the same essence, we gain the power to navigate life's challenges with greater ease and mastery. Whether in our emotional states, relationships, personal growth, or spiritual journey, the principle of polarity teaches us that balance is key, and that by embracing the full spectrum of experience, we can create harmony, growth, and fulfillment in every aspect of our lives. The power of polarity lies in its fluidity, the understanding that nothing is fixed, and that we have the ability to shift between the poles. By mastering this principle, we learn to transcend duality, embrace both the highs and the lows, and ultimately align ourselves with the greater unity that lies beyond the illusion of opposites.